dear colleagues, I think we need to begin our roundtable. It's not really round, it's oval, but still. At least we face each other as if we are talking to each other, and the audience is listening in and is thinking something about us. That's all we see, each other and part of the audience. Let me introduce some of the colleagues. Maybe we know each other, but still I think it's to have it. Grigori also had a Deputy Minister of Justice, Karen Kettering, Office Vice President, New York, Mr. Roshin, Director, Register of Cultural Values, and Nikita Semyonov, independent lawyer, consultant on artwork journal. Natalia Shetikhin, associate professor of the Criminal Law Department, Law Faculty, St. Peter State University. Dovin from Alpha Strachovanie. Vladislav Kirillov, colonel of the police and member of many investigations. Svetlana Rimskaya-Korskova, who is a senior fellow of the Technological Research Department. Grigory Goldovsky, head of paintings of the 18th and 19th century department. Mr. Golova, head of the legal department of the State Hermitage Museum. Mikhail Piotrovsky from Naples, head of the working group for general crime, and deputy public prosecutor who was involved in cases of cultural and art theft. We actually spread here some questions for discussion, and some said that there's nothing to discuss here. But anyways, what I would like to mention here in the beginning is that I think the honeymoon between the museum world and the art world is now over. Just 3 live examples, and the Hermitage was involved there. The famous exhibition of the Degas sculptures based on the post-mortem masks. And there you can probably think whether we can sell as genuine such post-mortem casts. But the thing is that around this case, most of the museum experts declined to offer their opinions because there would be different opinions. Some people say that this is a Degas, others say that this is not a Degas, and they would be competing in courts. And that litigation goes on everywhere. Museum experts are not protected, although in the US there is a draft law which would protect the experts from such litigations, their right to an independent opinion which is offered offhand of sorts, not done by contract with somebody, with a customer. Another case in St. Petersburg, at the request of a collector, an art expert was arrested who recommended to buy a particular painting. That's not about the painting, but the question is whether you have some degrees of opinions and whether your opinions can be protected. The third case, the third example, is the federal law number 44, which requires third-party examination for any purchases of the objects of art. Well, which is hard to implement. So, for example, we are buying paintings for the Hermitage. We have 2 opinions from qualified experts, but those experts would be quite different. One expert is not an expert in the German art. The painting we're buying is from the German medieval art, and the other expert is basically the seller of this painting, also a good expert, but an interested party. And then you need to be thinking how to go there, which of the experts to involve, and what to do. It's a big issue, and we are kind of like at a standstill because we need to really think about the practicalities, how to get such expert examinations. A couple of thoughts. We can never be 100% sure that a certain item of art belongs to a painting unless we have a full set of documents proving so. There are two worlds. The world of fakes and the world of attributions, and they have different attitudes to the expert examinations that we have. And there you have different attitudes to experts. You have technical experts, or you have art experts, you have expert examinations, you have experts who are well inspired. But you can only measure the probability of having a certain 100% examination. Plus, there is a risk for any museum in purchasing objects of art. The risk for the museum, the risk for the seller, the risk for the buyer, the risk for the collector. So how would those risks be mitigated and minimized, or maybe insured against? If you can insure a risk, then you would think that everything is fine. Now, the idea of expert examination and the responsibility of such expert examination has two benchmarks: money and time in prison. And then, of course, you need to think in both measures. And also, if you have a different attribution of a painting, would it become worse or better? If you change the label, Caesar de Sesto is not something like Leonardo, right? But what is the true value of such a re-attributed painting? So just these issues for your thoughts, and this is not only our Russian-specific discussion, but this is a general discussion in the world. If you open the art newspaper, for example, you would see those articles about attributions, which is a lot really for the museum life to go normally. And I'm not sure whether there would be a union of museums or the arts market, which was properly organized of less, but museums are at the top and should serve as the ideal for expert examination. Anything else should be trying to catch up with the museums. But that's the known position of the Hermitage, probably not perceived as the correct one by others, but still. Now let me give the floor to my panelists, my fellow panelists, in a totally democratic way, from left to right, and perhaps Grigory, the floor is yours. Ladies and gentlemen, indeed this is a challenge which has become very topical in the most recent years, when the Ministry of Culture now has a budget, a significant budget, to procure objects and items of art. And we see now that the expert examinations in this area create a lot of difficulties, and the Ministry of Culture really trusts its expert panels and commissions, and any challenges in the work of such expert commissions still reveal a few challenges that we need. Discussions are quite vivid. The Ministry of Culture would always know the position and attitudes not only of the museum workers but also of the art dealers, because everything is available in this single information space. We are concerned to have a more solid footing to the solution. And for that, we think we need to have an independent federal standard for the assessment and examination of the objects of art. So we have a federal standard for assessment, but not specialized for the assessments and evaluations of the objects of art. Although there are some interesting projects, an interesting project which was prepared together with the Ministry of the Economy, but all the indicators there were set simply. They took the most known sales internationally and actually tried to dissect the price factors, what is included in the prices. So they have now shares of the aspects of prices used for the evaluation of the objects of art. So what are those properties of pricing of the objects of art? So that's a methodology suggested, but that's not a methodology, but a recommendation to the professional. So a position of a body of government, because the methodology still requires some specialized knowledge by experts, and the Ministry of Culture would not really claim that it has such. But if the community agrees with the indicators that I discussed earlier, the pricing indicators and the pricing factors, then we can use this to evaluate any objects of art. And we are prepared to recommend this methodology for use. But it's not only about evaluation of the objects of art, which is important to us. What is also important to us is to attribute an item to the museum collection. And we are preparing a particular piece of legislation, draft legislation, because how would you attribute an object of culture and classify it as a museum-level piece? For example, some of the fines that are offered to a museum, and the museum would not be accepting those fines because you need to have some documents to prove the belonging of such archaeological finds. But it's important for us to have those archaeological finds initially evaluated and examined so that we avoid situations when people donate or donate some items to museums and museums cannot accept them. So we really realize that we need to have some additional sets of notions so that we would have sort ledger of donations so that for museums so that people would not think about such ledgers as something secondary but as an important register. We see that this register could be the centerpiece of any solutions and decisions. So perhaps such a ledger would be a good idea. I don't think that there's much difficulty about this, but again, I think this is an idea that can be used, how to assess the cultural, historical and money value of museum collections. Expert examination of cultural valuables is important when we are talking about also imports and exports of the objects of art. And we have prepared appropriate norms so that expert examination in this particular business would be regulated in terms of nominating people or experts, in terms of defining the scope of their competence and their duties. We believe that this is something to be discussed, but of course we understand that the expert of examination of, say, musical instruments. It's like when our orchestras go abroad and they have to get an expert examination of the value of their musical instruments. But it's one thing. But when you're talking about some objects of art that basically go abroad for use there, we still need to think how to do the expert examination, and we couldn't really discuss any tax privileges or exemptions for the export of objects of art to be used abroad. But we understand that the turnover of such cultural values for export-import operations requires additional and better regulation, and export examination of any objects of art to be taken out of the country, to be taken into the country, should be made public, and we believe that this way we can avoid any critique or questions from the public or the tax authorities, and such customs and tax exemptions can be offered to all the participants in the turnover of the items of art and culture. So perhaps you would like to take a look at the draft law on cultural valuables. So the text is available at the website of the Ministry of Culture, and we would appreciate any comments on that. This act is important to be as a separate law, not only per se, but it's also kind of like a private initiative. But a law on culture is preferable because this way you can provide a solution to other aspects of expert examination of the items of art.
For instance, we try to define modern art, contemporary art, because it is in this category that we have the most conflicts when tax, duties and charges sometimes can amount to some considerable sums of money, and we have seen private collectors collecting these items already incurring a lot of expenses, and we also know that circulation in this field is not free circulation. Despite the creative aspects and cultural aspects involved here, we believe that there should be some regulation of these issues, and I would like to assure you that the Ministry of Culture will do its utmost to prevent situations where government structures are offered prices that are 2 or 2.5 times higher than the market value, even though we have sometimes auction statistics and are aware of the market value, but we are sometimes double charged on that. If there is a system of regulation, this can be effectively prevented. Thank you very much. Yeah, I could buy 5 Levitans for the price you are offering. Well, the Levitans are an interesting story. Yes, indeed, this is a story still unresolved. Now, Vladislav Kirillov, please, over to you. Good afternoon. Because I represent the law enforcement, we usually step in as a measure of last resort at the end of this performance when there is a guilty party involved. Therefore, on my part, I would like to address the possible effective measures that to hold accountable experts in the process of expert examination of cultural items from the standpoint of market processes as well as government regulation, and that would be export procedures and other aspects as well. My vision for this round table is this. We would like to hear from each other your approaches and your understanding of where we want to be and where we are going, and how prepared the different stakeholders are here, stakeholders who are involved in the same cause of preservation of cultural heritage, how they want to proceed, what kind of legal corporate regulation as well as public oversight they would like to see. This is my expectation. Thank you. Microphone, please. Yes, what about insurance? How can insurance protect experts that are offering you 5 Rembrandts or 5 Levitans for the price of 1, or vice versa? Okay, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Once again, it is an honor for me to represent the insurance community at this round table. I would like to make a brief overview of how insurance can contribute to resolving these problems, the problems that are on the agenda of this round table. Of course, it would be difficult to expect from the insurance community to be at the forefront of these policies, because by definition insurance is a supporting instrument that provides auxiliary services to already existing relations or relationships rather than relations that are still in the making. Insurance companies have links to the cultural valuables market in 2 ways. One way is when they insure objects of art as property assets, and in this respect we do depend on expert opinions when valuating these items. The second way in which we are connected is ensuring the professional liabilities of experts and valuators, and I would like to address that second way, because in these situations we are supposed to provide a service. We are not really the experts' customers in this situation. So how do we see this area? Insurance can only work and offer products in fields that already have established rules of the game and already meet certain criteria. Besides volume, they should also meet the criteria of transparency, legality, the availability of professional standards. These markets should also have professional associations and established organizations in place. Examples of these markets are the auditing market, notary services, arbitration managers, valuation of any kind. These are fields where there are federal rules in place, there are self-regulating organizations already functioning. In these fields, we already observe a range of well-established and clearly defined insurance products. The availability of standards enables one to identify professional errors and mistake in any field of any kind, and to distinguish them from actions, involuntary actions that have inadvertently led to a certain consequence. It is the mistake that is the focus of insurance, because intentional actions are exempt from insurance. I'm referring to situations where an expert may intentionally provide false information or false grounds for a certain opinion. On the theoretical level, that applies not only to expert examination but to other fields as well. So for us, the market for cultural expert services is still underdeveloped and does not meet the criteria of a fully fledged established market. Just as Valery said, steps are being made towards standardization, and if and when these standardization efforts do create a solid professional community that will be guided and governed by certain laws, if and when we can form a certain understanding, a mainstream understanding of an insurance product that can be offered market-wide. We will be working in that direction. How that would work in terms of protecting the experts, we could take as a benchmark some of the existing insurance products, and one of them would be insurance for valuators. There is a set of standards, but those are of purely technical nature. For instance, the evaluators report is required to make references to 3 valuation standards, i.e. comparison, evaluation, cost and revenue evaluation. If these technical formalistic criteria are met, then it is presumed that the examination, the analysis has been bona fide and is taken as valid. Any deviations from that are considered irregular. Therefore, since the very beginning of these laws and this kind of insurance, there have been very few cases whereby an expert mistake has been established. We're talking about a handful, a very limited number of cases. Therefore, the insurance products that are offered are mostly offered in a very formalistic way, and we have to acknowledge that. Therefore, even if you have a standard for experts, it doesn't mean, it is not really guaranteed, at least at this point, that there will be insurance processes on the ground once that product is launched. However, one thing is for sure: if there is a procedure for establishing expert mistake, these products will appear. The problem currently is that there is no practice of proving an expert mistake. So products from the insurers will be offered as long as and in as much as there are mechanisms in place for controlling experts' activities and comparing them against some standards. The Prime Minister has just asked the Ministry of Finance to provide proposals for the procedure for ensuring cultural valuables and for providing government guarantees in the case of their movements and transportation. But that's for property, that's for physical assets. So which way are we going to take? Government guarantees or insurance? Well, I think for the experts, it's all about commercial insurance. As far as exhibitions are concerned, there should be state guarantees, of course. That directive from the Prime Minister is certainly welcome, but we have heard repeatedly, 3 times, assurances from the Ministry of Finance with the only proviso that they are not prepared to provide funding. So thank you for the good news indeed. But the question remains, where does the role of the government, of the state, begins and ends? Where exactly can the government be a lifesaver and where it can't be? Maria, would you require, as an expert, any insurance in your professional work? Oh, no question about that, no doubt. The attributive opinions that we provide and that we are asked to provide should be no different in our case than in the case of experts operating in the market. So we operate for large museums like the Hermitage, and yes, indeed, we are unique subject matter experts. I would say it's not because of our visual experience, it's also about it's also the result of our experience of working with different collections. Perhaps third-party examination is not required in the case of the Hermitage, but there are many, many museums around that require our expertise. Therefore, I do believe that insurance is a very important concern. For instance, you provided third-party opinion. That museum buys an item, but then Yuri says the item was overpriced. It was bad judgment from the museum. How am I supposed to protect you? No, I don't think that we should evaluate. An expert is not supposed to evaluate. We could make benchmark references to Sotheby's or Christie's or other auctions. We can draw similarities, but in the case of a museum procuring an asset, we could certainly take into consideration a range of factors. For instance, filling a certain gap in the collection, or we could be buying in the interests of simply augmenting our collection. These are usually the types of arguments that we provide. As far as pricing is concerned, prices can be different, price considerations can be different, and sometimes we can accept a higher or a lower price depending on other factors. But the question regarding technology-heavy examinations and attributions, I can say that sometimes both expert attribution and technological attribution is required. Sometimes the findings will be different from these two different types of evaluation. Let me give you a very simple example. 18th century porcelain items. How are you supposed to run an assay on such equipment? You cannot run thermoluminescence analysis on items of that kind, and at the end of the day, with regard to such items, it's only the expert who can provide an opinion. They don't really need to be a subject matter expert of that. They need to look for the style, the ornamentation, the individual style of workmanship to say whether it's authentic or not. As far as external examination is concerned, I think it's important to remember why people commission expert evaluation. If it's a private collector, when do they commission examination? Is it before or after the purchase? If the expert's opinion does not coincide with the owner's opinion, and we know that many owners are connoisseurs of those items, there need to be some mechanisms in place to ensure and protect the expert, because they may be sometimes under threat. And yes, going back to insurance, I believe there should be insurance, and there needs to be some form of corporate insurance here. Perhaps we should also involve external experts. We don't have a procedure, we don't have a mechanism. Just a brief intervention. As a means of protection, insurance can also provide for legal protection of the insured person. If we're talking about liability insurance, we can protect against lawsuits against the experts. For instance, if the owner files a lawsuit or a third party sues, the insuring organization will involve other experts and will stage a defense. But what about physical liability, material liability? If the case is lost and a professional error is established, then you are eligible to your insurance. Physical and moral responsibility of the expert. Well, you know, as we go along, I keep thinking about different things here, but one thing is for sure, really, there needs to be legal regulation of experts' activities. Otherwise, they find themselves in a void. But on my part, I would like to observe that all matters relating to legal regulation of experts' activities should go through a very thorough, focused, in-depth, profound process of professional discussion in the community. Because sometimes statements that may seem quite professional and profound will be completely useless in practice. For instance, people say that the identification of provenance is important. In the process, it's important criteria, but sometimes you can trace the provenances back all the way to the artist's work studio. Sometimes provenance, the known provenance, doesn't go as far. It goes as far back as 2 or 3 previous owners. As far as overpricing, underpricing, and market benchmarking is concerned, we have seen very vivid situations whereby there is a work of art available in the market. It has a certain attribution, for instance, an unknown artist. That work of art is evaluated, examined, and sold to a museum. When the museum runs the expert review procedure internally, they identify the work as Karl Brulov. The initial owner purchased it for $30,000. Had they known that this was a Brulov, they would have certainly offered it for a different price or not offered at all. So this brings us to a more general issue, that of the relations between museums, individual collectors, and the general market. Perhaps potentially it would be easy to simply say that the museums have nothing to do with the arts market, that museums are separate, to leave it to the dealers, owners, collectors. It's up to them to choose an expert and to place all responsibility on those people. And if something goes wrong, we might say that, why didn't you go to the museum for that expertise? But our experience tells us that we cannot abandon the arts market for various reasons. One of them being that in that way we will barricade themselves from accessing a lot of important information about what's going on in the arts world. The second reason is that we're not in a position to we won't be in a position to influence the quality of expert examination in the market if we are not part of it.
Here, another important issue arises about the relationship between a dealer's expert evaluation and a museum-based expert evaluation, and about the responsibility of even a certified expert. There is a list of so-called certified experts. The materials for certification of experts, there is a questionnaire. It was sent to us. We were asked to become certified experts, to have a seal and everything else, all the other attributes. Having read this questionnaire, I understood that, not for love of money, I'm not going to join this community of certified individual experts. The thing is not only that the responsibility becomes graver, there is an opportunity. Two certified experts may have 2 different professional levels, and the same happens with external expert evaluation. We have received from the Ministry of Culture multi-page lists of certified experts who can provide external opinion. From the point of view of professional experience, let's say, there is a huge distance between those experts. There are people who have never worked with painting, and they say that they are experts in paintings of 18th, 19th century. The same applies to sculpture, porcelain. Well, there are probably such unique people who are experts in everything, but shall we trust them entirely? For the museum community, their opinion doesn't mean much. External expert evaluation. It makes the process longer, and the question of speed is very important today. And the possibility to react to the situation in the art market, I mean, on the part of museums and experts, must be made much speedier. Museums must prepare a lot of documents about work of art, and this makes them absolutely uncompetitive on the art market. Those objects of art which are bought and sold at auctions, they must be processed in 6 weeks to 2 months. But if you go via a museum, it will take you 6 months or several years even, and then comes this external expert evaluation. So what kind of ways out I can see here? And I would like to object to Maria about technological expert evaluation. Technological expert evaluation must apply to any material and can apply. I think that experts have certain criteria or techniques how to evaluate porcelain, paper, any other materials. There are different methods to date archaeological material, for example. You just have to go deep into it, but technological expert evaluation provides a foundation for many conclusions by an expert, for an external user of this expert opinion. The presence of provenance information, comparison of stylistic assumptions, stylistic peculiarities, all those are factors that need to be taken into account. The question is who takes the decision. And this means only one. Such expert evaluation is possible only, exclusively, if it is collegiate, if it is done by a group of people, and it can be done only within a large museum-like institution, which has each and every possibility or doesn't have any possibility. So unless a certified expert, we cannot, who will probably feel ashamed that he cannot give an opinion about painter by the name of Smith, and the museum can say that we don't have an opportunity to evaluate the work of this artist. We can only date it and give it back to you. So this is my opinion. Mr. Fini, could you please tell us about Naples, how the museum and art market expert evaluation interact there?
Sure. Good afternoon. I would say on a general level, as I'm a public prosecutor dealing normally with other kind of crimes like drug dealing, muggings, extortions, and things like that, I have got in this field a limited experience compared to the other speakers' experience. Anyway, since we have got so many cultural value items in Italy, in our office, even on a criminal field, our chief decided to set up a team dealing with crimes against cultural property. And so he called me on to take part, to be part of this group. And so I began dealing with cultural heritage, and particularly against cultural property, against cultural heritage. I have to say, so far, I haven't ever stumbled across a fake expert examination or a not independent expert examination. But maybe this is related to the specific nature of the expert examination normally we deal with. I mean, we are not a private customer, we are not a private collector, and we are maybe, in this case, a stronger public customer. Because, I mean, maybe expert witnesses, when coming before us, can have a reasonably a fear to not get away with a fake expert examination or things like that. So maybe that's why I haven't ever stumbled across things like that so far. Or maybe it was just a lucky coincidence. But anyway, I would say that as the director said, we have any way to set up remedies against this risk. On a criminal level, we have got both money to be paid or time to be served, as you said. I wouldn't, though, crack down too much on expert witnesses, because on one hand, I do not see so many differences with the other specialized sectors of human knowledge, like medical issues or also examination relating to road accidents and things like that. So there are general risks. I do not see, maybe I'm wrong, further relevant risk. So if we push too much on expert witnesses, we also can end up not having any more. So maybe this is what happened in our office. So in a level which is preliminary to the criminal level, we have been setting up preliminary rules to keeping this risk from coming true. These rules are related to the nomination of the expert witnesses, which has to be done among people included in a special list, including eligible people with no criminal records, and particularly with no criminal records at all, apart from specific criminal records like fake expert examination, which we wouldn't give at any time any employment to them. And most of all, I would say the rule proposed by the present speaker is what we normally obey. I mean, we normally give collegial charge that for sure prevents the risk that if you get this charge to 3 or 4 people, if one of them is corrupted or can get corrupted, he has got the other to exercise vigilance, a control upon him, and this can also reduce the risk of a fake examination. And on the other hand, I wouldn't crack down too much on expert witness because of the importance in the criminal process of an expert examination. I've been in charge of an investigation, a massive investigation, a really thorough probe concerning cultural property in Italy. It has been about a library which has been massively privated of like 4,000 of the 150,000 books, which is the library, the Germany library in Naples. And they happen to be taken away, these books, by the man who had been appointed as his director. So we have got here a case of corruption, but a case of corruption in which the expert witnesses have been playing a leading role in uncover and reveal all the crimes committed, because the library was really big. And so on the first level, it was difficult to understand how many books at the beginning were inside. And after the process, all the books were, it was it was a mess actually, and everything had been messed up. And so we had also problems to find out which books were still in and which books were out. And then in the trial, even after recovering the books, we had to be sure that the single books was in the library before the director came in, and every single book had been taken away by the director himself. So that's why the expert examination in this investigation and after in the trial has been played a leading role, and that's why I say we can set up preliminary rules, but without exaggerating. Otherwise, we can have less people available to come into.
Thank you very much. Svetlana, please. The floor is yours. First of all, I will make a joke. Everybody's tired. I will tell you about our mindset, our mentality. Many years ago in Vienna, and I was in a diplomatic car with my friend of mine, and he's so our uncultured compatriot. He just threw away a cigarette end from the window of the car. 2 cross roads later, he was stopped and he had to pay a fine of several thousand shillings. And since then, he never threw away a cigarette end, never in a public place. We know experts who all make mistakes. These mistakes are often numerous. I never think that it is done on purpose or for money. I don't think that those experts are not of high qualification, but I'm not going to give you a single name under torture. This is our mentality and insurance risks. It is not by chance. The mentality is that you are not going to name a person. It's happened not by chance that only the Russian Museum is allowed to provide expert evaluations. No, it is that they cannot do it. We are working on it. This market, we call it academic consultation, as Grigory Naumich said. It is collegiate effort, and in the final analysis on this expert opinion, there are 5 signatures. 3 experts sign it. Head of a particular department signs it. And finally, Evgenia Petrova, Deputy Director for Academic Work, puts a final signature on this expert opinion. This work is paid very modestly, and I would like to ask the representative of a ministry who left the room at a very good moment. And remembering good old Soviet years where Russian Museum, as a leading institution, was providing expert opinion on a continuous basis. We attributed objects of art, those objects of art that other smaller museums were about to purchase, even large museums such as Omsk and other. We always did it with an interest, of course, but always free of charge, as you understand. But since we had a lot of work on our hands besides, we were not very happy. I would like to ask the ministry, let's leave the Hermitage and Russian Museum as a lead museums, as it was the case in Soviet times, but this expert evaluation should be done on a commercial basis. This is my proposal. Maybe it's not entirely appropriate from the legal standpoint, but we are doing this work on end for Suvorov Museum, for Derzhavin Museum, for Pushkin's house. Of course, we do it with all due respect and with some interest, but it creates a huge workload on us. If museum could be paid something, I'm not saying about individual experts, life would be much easier for us, because you all know what kind of salaries we receive. On this happy note, I would give the floor to Natalia. Natalia, will it enhance criminal liability? Yeah, I'm changing a lot in the presentation I wanted to make. I would like to make a preamble following on what Svetlana said. A friend of mine several years ago, it was also threw away a cigarette end in Moscow Road. It was very hot, and this cigarette end landed in an open window of a standing car, which was a police car, a traffic police car. And it fell on the lap of a traffic police officer. This person didn't pay a fine of 1,000 shillings, but this guy not only never threw away cigarette ends again, he quit smoking. So the results could be achieved in many different ways. I'm deliberately trying to go around various issues of substance, because I can only admire the wonderful level of qualification of panelists. Our legal assistance, and I'm saying as a lawyer, is to provide security mechanisms for everyone. A lawyer is like a reinforced vest, bulletproof vest. It's heavy, but it can save you your life.
You seem to be discussing some questions that to lawyers, to assessors, and to you are not a problem. I am categorically against having experts and the art experts to do the evaluations. I'm categorically against this because if you take some legal expert examination, it would never be done by a single expert. I'm sorry for my colleagues who do this alone, but it would be a comprehensive examination. You're talking about experts who are guided by the international accounting standards, by the Russian accounting standards. They do the assessments and evaluations. Now, to have some initial data, of course, you can take one expert, but this is a big trouble for the expert to act alone. And the main questions and challenges of expert examinations would be improper, incorrect evaluation of the objects of art. There are unique things, not only in art, but elsewhere. An expert can evaluate, for example, the space station, and it's one and only. And of course, objects of art are also unique. I asked my colleagues in my firm to come up with the proper international norms, and there are such norms and provisions. And the second question that came to my mind is when this evaluation or examination was done. To lawyers, there is a difference whether, say, this not this expert examination, but rather attribution of an item of art. Was it done before the purchase, or was it done afterwards, after the purchase? Again, there are certain peculiarities. So we are facing two realities of sorts. There are errors and mistakes of the experts, but there are also intentional deceits, and you can never prove that an expert was acting intentionally, providing the wrong assessment. But of course, I can prove that if we have such an expert. For now, I can prove that he was wrong, and we're talking about some machinations, and I can prove it through some evidence. I don't see really anything to mitigate the guilt of such an expert, because we're talking about high-value objects, and the profit margin of any objects of art that are older than 100 years old would be in the range of 8.6% annualized, which is not available from any other investment, say in bonds or bills. So how to pose any such intentional wrong examinations that we can simply not attribute a painting properly, but there are some probabilistic examinations. And for example, if you take people who are experts in signatures, they would never give you 100% certainty that this signature belongs to this person or was done by it. So, like two customers, the customer who's shown a piece of paper with a signature with 100% certainty, the customer can never provide an answer. The customer can only say that it looks like my signature. So we're talking about probabilities. Methodologies. One way of protection, or the only way of protection for experts, would not be insurance, but would be some stable and mandatory methodology of doing examinations. Experts, the guilt of experts can only be established when there is a deviation from a methodology. If the expert never deviated or violated the methodology, then of course you can claim that he never did it unintentionally. I understand the complexity of the art world, but I still believe that having such a good methodology in place would be your protection. Nobody would be twisting your hands for that, but again, talking about some proper methodologies, or say in ballistics, you can have some certainty. There is an error of margin, but still. Now, about evaluations and insurance, we actually talked about say, ensuring the work of public notaries. And to give you an example, in St. Petersburg, there is a practice where a notary public is only responsible or liable when he or she violated the procedures of such a notary work, which means that if you bought an apartment or using a fake passport, you would never get any compensation. A notary public said that, okay, I got this passport. I cannot be an expert in judging whether the photograph of the person who was presented to me was put into the correct passport. So all I had would be these documents. I tried to do the assessment or examination of the documents, but and I thought I gave the proper advice. So this would never protect the market or the experts. Now, if you think about the amounts that you would have to pay, say, in premiums, then of course you'd also put in the probability of mistake and the value of the objects of art, and basically the amounts that you would be paying every year would be so high that you would never be able to insure. So there are certain mechanisms in place that you have to think about. Of course, you need to stay within the domain of reputations and a good, sound, and stable methodology. And I don't think that there should be any specialized assessors or experts for the art market solely, because the expert would, I would say, die in commons if he or she would only specialize in this. And we are talking about professional activities, and if such activities are not diversified, you're talking about a person who would no longer be really responsible for anything. I mean, there are people with some specialized expertise, but still a professional assessor from a big four would probably come up with a better evaluation of an object of art compared to an in-house expert. If you take St. Petersburg State University, you'll see there that this is one of the biggest expert communities in the Russian Federation, and really we also do not only the learning and teaching, but we also have nano centers, so we have geologists and other experts being invited by the government to do the expert examinations. So it just takes some amendment of the statutory document for that. I'm director of the Russian Center of Court Examinations, Court Experts, and to continue our discussion, let me tell you that today in the market, the examinations, we do have experts in examining some antiques and works of art, but also we need to have some body that would prove the qualifications of such experts, and this is A. B, we need to have some methodologies in place that would be used by such experts. We also need to validate such methodologies and methods that they are proper, because today during the examination you, as an expert with some specialized knowledge, would come up with certain opinions on this or that subject. If it is positive, then it's okay. But as soon as you have some problems with the expert will say, I have nothing to do with that. But the expert must be responsible for what he or she is doing. Then if this body of experts would have such requirements in place, then you would be better off. And the experts should be there first to examine a work of art and then suggest a price. But that wouldn't be the only price, because it could vary, and this is something to put into your methods of examination. Today, Moscow is full with experts of antiques, and people who buy those pieces of art, they would be complaining that they thought that they were buying some antiques, but actually they were buying something that was replicated just a few decades ago. Now, you can tell to an expert in signatures, and proving signatures, that basically you violated the methodology or you did something wrong, and there you can prove it. With the experts of art, probably cannot do that. Natalia claimed that she can do that, but I still think it is very, very difficult that the mistake was done intentionally. The expert will say, I'm no expert, I am a specialist in this, so I believe, and this is my personal opinion, that this is such and such. Should you sign for your opinion or not? Well, if you do, then of course you can put your things, your market in order, only if you have some proven responsibility. Now, would our museum examination be different from a ballistic test? Yes. First of all, hello to all of you, and I should say that I share the opinions that were expressed here, but not with all. With methods about technological examinations, again, this is not something like it. You have changes in equipment, in people, in methods, etc. You have this catalog of fakes. Now, it is not immediately that people realize how to detect such fakes. Only after 10 or 20 such fakes were discovered, then you would have some methodology in place to really understand whether it's a genuine work of art or not. And also you need to understand how the genuine work of art was made, through which methods, and how the fake was made. And you don't find really an educational establishment where you would train such experts. They self-learners, more or less, and we are talking about big museums, and experts would be working there. In the Soviet Union times, I mean, you would ask people from the biggest museums in Moscow and St. Petersburg to do that. But just in the provinces, you don't have this sound technological footing for work. Also, with the young experts, I would say that we sometimes call ourselves the retired department, because we have retirees working in our departments, and we don't have the young experts coming to us. What we do is that we just donate part of our salaries even to help the young experts work in our departments. We have a professor, a PhD, with an income of 14,000 rubles a month. It's just nonsense. But if, say, an antique expert provided an opinion and said that, you know, I provided a wrong assessment, and it is a fake, and then this antique dealer would come to an expert and say, we have to share the responsibility. The damage is, say, 10,000 US dollars, because the customer later revealed that that was a fake piece of art. On the other hand, it's a negative situation, but if you say that the art dealer managed to sell something for $3 million because of a positive expert examination and advice, the art dealer would never offer half of the money to the expert who did the examination, right? So it's like a one-way street, and expert bureaus that are available with various auctions. Sometimes they are too affiliated and detached from collections. People cannot come personally there and do the examination of a proposed of an object of art proposed for auction. And of course, you would have several experts signing a report, but I mean, how would you have it with a panel of experts signing the report, the examination report? Some people say that with a group of experts, it's never the case that say, if a group of experts finds the authenticity of work of art, then it would be hard to say no to one of the in that group. It is easy to manipulate with a single expert, and plus there's a lot of pressure. For example, in our department we have about 40 or 50 pieces of art, and only 4 or 5 people are dealing with those pieces of art, and we receive more and more regularly, and that's a heavy workload for all of us. You need to work to go to libraries, to work with catalogs, and people ask us to work faster and faster, and say the art dealer would be calling us and says, can you prove that this work of art is really genuine, and so that I can sell it faster? But that's the regular practice of most of the expert bureaus. I just can tell you that it's hard for people to work like experts, especially for older generations. What I also wanted to say in conclusion is that unfortunately we don't have people here who are on the other side, or we do, because I really would appreciate to listen to the opinion of those people who are our people standing on the other side. Sergey, what you mentioned, just to correct you, is not the methodology of examination. It's not about technical means and gadgets. We actually meant something else. Every spent cartridge or bullet would be different from another one. Your papillary would be different from everybody else. But the methodology is not really about this, but about the level of verification for any expert.
Well, Vladimir is usually the person who provides the expose. But my question to you is different. If it's so difficult to run an examination, why do it? I know that many museums recognize that and they prohibit their employees from doing it. I would like to continue with this line of reasoning. Well, we've come a long way here, and I have a lot to say indeed, but I'm mindful of the time, and I know how important it is to give the opportunity to speak to others, so I'll try to be brief. The prosecutor from Naples made a very exquisite statement when he says that the accounts know, the experts know that they will be held accountable, that they are not going to get away with it. Well, in Russia they do get away with it. The Russian Arts Protection Agency has issued a 5-volume catalog with several thousands of objects priced $100 million US. And we know that a lot of these works are in private collections now. About 300, 200 people have recovered their money, in some cases several million rubles. It took them a lot of pain and a lot of suffering. The overall the average recovered the average price for these forged objects is usually 200, 300,000 euros. So our experts somehow get away with it. For decades they have misled people. Not a single one has been convicted. So just to be brief, and by the way, on another note, I would like to say that there are 7 catalogs of wanted objects. According to experts, about 400 million rubles have been recovered, and the items were all the items were returned to the museums. Currently, we don't have this Russian State Agency for Arts Protection. It's part of the Ministry of Culture's mandate anymore at this point. And I hope our colleagues from the Moscow law enforcement will not take offense if I say this. The police department that deals with theft and search for arts objects, and I have been following the situation since 1995, so I believe that you in St. Petersburg have one of the best such divisions in your police force. They have been one of the most successful units with the best rate. And what about the value of the items? Vladimir said that it's group work and that safeguards against mistakes. Well, let me tell you, we've seen situations of collusion, a lot of that. And regarding this catalog again, I am personally very thankful to you because I'm a co-manager of that project, and I thank the Russian Museum also for the project because the second and the fourth volume of the catalog was compiled in cooperation with the Russian Museum. We wouldn't have done it without them, and my special thanks goes to your employee Yelena Nesterova. I have never seen her. Oh, hello. Thank you. And let me give you some down-to-earth example. Rather than talking about theoretical things, a well-known person in Moscow purchased this for 530,000, and it's a very Shagin. The initial examination said that this is a masterpiece, this is authentic, it's a work of art that needs to be purchased by the state for a museum. Whereas the Russian Museum and Yelena Nesterova in particular found that it's just a nice copy. We saved the buyer, and the person who was selling did return the money, so there was no damage. So these are the types of situations that we deal with. If organizations of experts posted online their negative findings, it would be much better without really giving the names or identifying the people involved. For instance, you receive a painting to analyze. You know how it happens sometimes? Sometimes the expert himself will say, you know, this is authentic, but then after additional study, they will return a negative answer because later on they get more evidence to change the opinion. But of course, once again, all this scene is where a lot of money is at stake. I personally know about 300 people who have been able to recover their funds, but on the other hand, many more are still in hiding or on the wanted list. And one topic we have not mentioned today is a theft from museums, substitution of objects of art. And yes, that department that deals with that, you no longer have it. And by the way, from people I talk to in relation to these situations, they're really very satisfied with the fact that we don't have the special police anymore and that we don't have the State Agency for the Protection of Art Objects. And I think the Naples prosecutor knows very well that these art divisions within your police force are very active, and I think they deal with 20 to 30 cases of theft every year. I don't remember the exact statistics, but for some reason Russia has been closing these police departments. People in question, people doing funny business, they are satisfied indeed. The Rosokran Kultura, the agency, used only had 3 people dealing with search and rescue of stolen works of art, and they have been browsing through auction lists, and they were very active, but all that stopped. I believe that the Antiques Police Division in your city has made a lot of progress, really. Yes, indeed. Your work is very visible. As far as expert examination is concerned, I'm absolutely sure that this shouldn't be done under the umbrella of the museums, and I'm glad that we have the Deputy Minister of Culture here today, because let me tell you this. Mr. Shvidkoy, in 2006, I don't remember when that was, doesn't matter really. I think back in 2006, prohibited museums from providing expert opinions, but they still continue with that. No, officially they were banned, not to let the museums down, so that museums are not compromised, their reputation is not compromised with, these funny findings. But they do it in other formats these days. They disguise it as consultations or providing advice, but what they eventually do is they issue a document that has a government stamp on it. Why is it that the museums are doing this? Why is it that they are on a fee-paying basis or a voluntary basis? Why do they provide those kinds of services? When the director of the Tretyakov Gallery was discharged, I remember how it was, the background of that situation. We showed him evidence before that and asked him to take care of the situation. He did nothing. When the new director, Lebedeva, came in, she, on day 1, gathered her employees and said, if you ever provide any kind of expert opinion outside, I will fire you. Thank you. Nikita, please. We still have a couple of minutes. No, one more thing, I'm sorry. I got so nervous. Today, museums are forbidden to provide expert opinions, but the Grabar Center, for some reason, continues with that. It's not about forbidding, it's not about prohibitions. We have museums who have never, ever provided any official statements. Officially, their employees are prohibited from doing that. It's up to the museums, really, at the end of the day. I think it's an internal problem that the museums should resolve, and they should be held accountable. It has been mentioned already that this discussion is not involving any of the consumers of services. We don't have art dealers, collectors, or gallery curators here. For many, many years, I have personally been dealing with the art market and with episodes of theft, with fake objects of art. I've been dealing with conflicts between various antique dealers, conflicts that sometimes resulted in criminal cases. This is what I've been doing over the past years, but many, many years before that, I had been a colleague of Mr. Kirillov because I worked for investigation in the law enforcement. I would like to provide you with a perspective of that community of people. Let me give you a few examples. They have to deal with a lot of forged or false expert opinions that circulate around Moscow. Sometimes it's difficult to say. You cannot really judge whether that particular expert really provided that opinion, especially when it's not on an official letterhead. Sometimes it's just on a blank sheet of paper. This is practiced by Kirillova in Moscow. Similar things are happening in St. Petersburg. I have a whole pile of expert findings, undated, no letterhead, no stamp. And if there is a stamp, it's from the HR department of the organization. This can jeopardize some of the objects of art, paintings that are in the museums. It's it's unclear whether they have been sold or not. So imagine as a customer I get that opinion and I don't know the authenticity of the document itself, to say nothing about the painting. Very often, and this is another practice that we depend, experts will disavow their own opinions. They will abandon them in an informal way. For instance, if they have given a yes, they can secretly say to a gallery curator, don't buy it because it was a false finding. Sometimes, if the expert is a stranger to you, they will never confess. They will never acknowledge an intentionally misleading opinion. The Tretyakov Gallery has officially recognized as false some 200 of its expert opinions. I think Ms. Valieva did that, and it was widely circulated in the papers. But what about the rest? What about the other confirmations of authenticity? It would take an enormous effort to sort through this mess in order to sift and distinguish between false and bona fide opinions. Without that, we can't set the market, straighten the market, and bring order to it. Another thing that's happening, at least in Moscow, is trade in information about the circulation of various items, and that information is channeled immediately to the leaders of the antique world. And sometimes this will result in situations where a painting would leave the walls of the museums while it's still being examined for reviewing, for instance. Another problem is that experts are becoming much too close with the art dealers sometimes, that they get their cut from transactions, which in many jurisdictions is a criminal offense. The case in point is Yelena Basna. Mikhail Piotrovsky was right when he said that you cannot be criminally liable for an opinion, for an expert finding, unless an intention is proved. And Yelena mentioned that also. But the Basna case is different. She was a participant in that transaction. She did not provide an opinion. She received funds, and she was brokering a deal, and the painting in question was had been likely copied from another painting which is residing in the Russian Museum's collection. I remember another case several years ago. There was the Belilovsky criminal case involving a Karl Gounod fake, illegally sold. The actual painter was a lesser-known German artist. The amount was 600,000. The art dealer who invented the provenance of the picture was got a prison term of several years, but initially 50% of the money went to the expert, Bekati, a Riga-based expert who confirmed the authenticity of the object and instructed her employees to intentionally change the Russian translation of her expert opinion. She was charged with a crime. She was brought to justice. She hasn't been convicted because Latvia has a different position on the matter. There is a number of internationally famous examples that my colleague Mikhail knows about, I'm sure. For instance, a group case for Russian avant-garde, Natanov, Zaruch, and others. As far as I know, there is certain evidence against our Russian-based experts, including Jafarova and Kovalenko, who provided several confirmations. I know about a situation when Kovalenko confirmed the authenticity of an exeter that was pledged as a security, and after that the painting was exported and finally vanished, whereas originally it had been intended as a security, and the expert said that it is authentic, it can be used indeed as security. There's every reason to believe that this was a collusion between the officer, between the criminal and the expert. And the latest case is that of Parisot. I know about a situation when Pushkin Museum had almost purchased for its collection an item approved by Parisot, an item which was not in the Cheroni catalogue. There was a number of chemical and other technical tests on that item that gave no reason to believe that this was a Modigliani. The transaction was stopped last minute. Yes, the reason is because some of our experts provided their opinions to the Russian museums because they were confident that this was not a Modigliani. The sellers felt very uncomfortable about that, and especially the experts who had approved the Modigliani fame previously. Now, I'm painting a rather dark picture intentionally, a kind of an apocalypse in the market, but I do believe there is light at the end of the tunnel. I usually speak in favor of liberal methods. What can be done? Well, the technological requirements should not be correlated very rigidly with expert opinion. The expertise, art consulting has a very good practice in that. They have very solid technology, but they're flexible in selecting their experts from various museums, and that provides additional income for the expert. And this is only fair because carrying out examination is a lot of work. But then the expert can be held accountable. They are not really protected by the institutional image of the museum. They're acting for themselves, and if they make a mistake, they know the charges will be brought on the seller and partially on the expert. I believe that external examinations of that kind in favor of private persons should be regulated by simple service contract, with the only difference that the service may be a negative one if the finding is no, but any liability should be governed by a civil contract, a services contract. What if the finding is incorrect? You go to court and you try to recover. The damage was the seller of that item should be penalized criminally because it was they acted intentionally misleadingly, but the museum's reputation will not be jeopardized in this way because the expert will be acting as a free agent in that case. But what Sergei Sirov said, just as he said, we need reference items for high-quality examination, we need photos, we need soil samples, and so on and so forth. These objects could be borrowed from the museum for a certain fee. If museums were willing to do that, in that case, we could have fully fledged expert examination outside the museum walls.
We're not mentioning the third parties who make those fakes. Let us give an opportunity for everyone to speak out, and then we will have a discussion.
Экспертное заключение по поводу наших.
Thank you, Professor Piotrovsky, and thank you to the organizers of the conference for everything they've done. I'm going to give you a few examples from the United States and from the UK that might be useful and might be very necessary, in part because the art market functions internationally now, and transactions, especially major transactions, are covered by various jurisdictions. While the press has been full recently of lots of stories about problems with sales of arts and expertises, in the United States at least, we trace the problem back 100 years to this case, Hahn versus Duveen. And I particularly like this because you see the Oracle of Delphi is here sued. What happened was that someone was offering a painting to a museum. The museum had a sponsor. A New York newspaper phoned Duveen in the middle of the night, and what would never be done today, he accepted the phone call, he answered, and he very briefly gave the opinion that it was not possible this painting was correct because, in fact, it was in the Louvre. There are multiple versions of this painting, and he was able to say that this one, with a provenance back to several hundred years, could not possibly be in Kansas City and available for sale. He was promptly sued for what would now be about $6 million US because of a particular law that, or a legal concept that has a huge impact in the United States. It's the concept of the libel of property, libel or slander of property. Should you say something that could possibly disrupt a sale, you can be sued. And the owners of this painting did indeed sue Lord Duveen. The case was very modern in that it continued for 10 years. The litigation was horrendous, I'd say. Very expensive in that sense, and it was one of the first examples of technical examination presented to a jury, some of the first examples of x-rays. And it was very interesting in many of the analysis these days. It's pointed out that while the technical analysis might be right, in many cases you need to present it to a jury who might not understand a thing about this and are dependent in the way we are dependent, say, on our physicians to interpret scientific results for us. This case, over the last 6 decades, has had a huge impact on our art market, to the point that in 2012, there was something like a crisis. Everything stopped. Museum workers, already unable to give any sort of opinion, prevented legally from doing so, and if they hoped to keep their jobs, were joined by artists' organizations, the foundations that usually were founded by the artist's family to protect and promote the artist's reputation. They had for many years been the official stamp saying that yes or no, this is a Francis Bacon, this is an Andy Warhol, this is, say, a work by Jean-Michel Basquiat. And in that year, most of them refused to give any sort of opinion. There was an evening organized at the Courtauld Institute late in December of 2011, one of the best institutions preparing young art historians in the UK. And they said, they canceled it. It was to discuss a group of works by Francis Bacon, said to be, that had been acquired and which the owner believes to be by Bacon. And they shut it down because they knew that there was a chance that they could be sued. And it has, in other words, put an enormous weight on scholarly exchange. You see there the Keith Haring situation, the Keith Haring Foundation photo, and I'll just read you what it now says on the Andy Warhol Foundation website. In their frequently asked questions, if you want to ask about your Andy Warhol or your piece you think is by him, can you tell me how much my Warhol painting is worth? What are the current selling prices of his works? And their answer is that the foundation does not appraise his work. If you are interested in an appraisal, contact the appropriate appraisal department of a professional auction house or an independent appraiser. Well, of course, the auction houses, we, for many years, work very closely with the people at the art foundations, with various museum experts, and if they're not allowed to talk to us and we're not allowed to talk to them, then nothing can go forward. So this is the situation in 2012. And Professor Piotrovsky mentioned that there's a law that is being considered now in the state of New York. 2 lawyers, art lawyers, have drafted a law to protect art experts, not journalists though. Journalists can still get into trouble. But this is two lawyers, private lawyers, who have drafted this. They need the support of two members of New York State's, basically our Congress and Senate, to sponsor it. And as I last heard, I searched, I could be wrong, they do not have sponsors. The bill has not been put before the state legislature. But there's a great push for this to happen because, yes, we can all be made financially responsible. And in the United States as well, most art historians who are in academia belong to an organization called the College Art Association. And since I was a graduate student, it has offered liability insurance for art historians. It is just now starting to offer liability insurance for catalog raisonné scholars who are also regularly now being brought to court because they refuse to include a certain collector's work in a catalog. Just very briefly, we all depend so much on provenance, and the example I'm about to show you is an outlier. It's outrageous and extraordinary, but it is something that whenever I receive provenance documents from someone offering me an object, I always think of. I don't know if you're aware of the case of John Drew and John Myatt, but John Drew was, I'm not sure what he really was. He said he was a physicist, he said he was many things, but what he did do was find an artist, John Myatt, who made lots and lots of paintings for him. He then gained access to various very important archives and libraries, including the National Art Library at the V&A, the Tate Modern, and the International Contemporary Art Center's library. And they're using a razor, and his computer inserted provenance in the library. The catalog you see open there, there's a Giacometti drawing, and that's not Giacometti, that's John Myatt, and he was able to insert it into the catalog. So as again, I say this is, I know, a very dark example and outrageous, but I think of it often. In the United States, we do have a standardized system. It's called, by the very unlovely name, USPAP. It just sounds awful in English. But it's our Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. We all restudy it every 2 years and take a test. You can see its website there, but they won't actually show you the standard because it comes in a book like this. It's about, I don't know, 600, 700 pages. It is probably not the most useful solution for people in this room. It emerged in the US after the savings and loan crisis, which you might remember between 1986 and 1995. Most of our savings and loan associations, well, a third of them failed because, in part, they were giving out loans on objects, real estate, farm equipment, farms, and the assessments of those objects, the valuations, were fictional. So you can see that under the things that one appraises, the training we get is not just for art, but also real estate, and in theory, I can value a tractor, which, of course, I can't. Finally, what I'd like everyone to look at if they get a chance, what I find really hopeful is the Association Art in Authentication Foundation. It's a group of lawyers, conservators, and art historians who came together 2 years ago to try and create better standards. Of course, they're only interested in painting. So this is no help to someone like me who works largely with things like silver and porcelain, and it's absolutely Western painting. It's no help to you either. But they produced an extraordinary document, I think, that is a model of evaluation and assessment because it forces the author to disclose what's your interest in the object, what were you paid, what methodology or methodologies did you use, and how sure are you? It allows some flexibility. It allows you to say that you might not be 100% sure. You feel 90% sure, 95% sure. And they've been working very fast, and I hope that they continue to work. And then finally, about assessments themselves, I have to say, in auction houses, we receive these opinions all the time. And in theory, several people have identified or described the ideal opinion. That is largely what we get, but I have to tell you what we also get is a one-page statement that says something, this is to protect everyone. Renoir is a good painter. This is a good painting. It must be by Renoir. And that's it. So I'm not sure what we're supposed to do with that. And in perhaps the very worst case, we were contacted by a collector's assistant who told us that a very major scholar had said something specific about an object. And in that case, we're barred by all sorts of privacy laws from contacting this major scholar to say, you know, basically, we have hearsay, can you confirm it? So with that, this has been very interesting for me. Thank you.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much. Everything is even more serious than here. Marina, please, you have the floor. I'm always the last. It is the most difficult task and the easiest task because I'm not going to repeat what other people said, but I would like to say that the most important thing, in order to solve the problem, you need to you need to formulate the definitions and terms. Mikhail Piotrovsky said that on the site of the Ministry of Culture there is a draft law that defines the notion of expert evaluation of museum arts, of objects of art. And I have to tell you that such expert evaluation has no definition yet. And very often the word expert evaluation is coupled with the word assessment, and these are two different, cardinally different things. What Karen was saying, what Natalia Sergeyevna was saying about there are standards for assessment, evaluation, they are verified. There are no standards for expert evaluation because there is no definition of such a notion as expert evaluation of an object of art. So I think that the main task of this new law is to define this new term, and then based on this definition, and we should couple with it such issues as the responsibility of the expert. If we have vague notions, responsibility and liability become also vague. An expert may say, I'm not an expert really, I'm just a specialist, I'm not responsible for anything. So when the major definitions are formulated, it will be easier for us to solve the problems that we raised here at this table. Thank you very much. We have about 5 minutes at the minimum. Who would like to say something? You wanted to say something, I'm sure. As a remark, what was said by Ms. Simonov and what you are saying, Professor Piotrovsky, you prohibit us to provide expert evaluation on behalf of museum, and there is no other option. But we must work jointly with the art market because this is a source of our museum collection, and it is hopefully such objects that we might need should not leave at least the Russian market. People come to us with their objects of art. We do all the proper tests, we attribute it this thing, and then they take those objects back. But with a piece of paper where it states that it is by this and that artist of the 18th century, they go further on, and they say that this thing was in the Hermitage, and we can confirm that this is attribution. And then another thing happens. We are now working on an international market, and these things can be carried out abroad and exported abroad and sold there. But still, in Europe, State Museum never provide expert evaluations. I know that you also don't provide those, but Did I understand you correctly? If you do expert evaluation, when you want to buy something, your legal department must find a way around the situation, not to give. So it's just a transfer act. When the picture, the painting is brought to the museum, we have to register when something is brought to us. I'm not saying about the fact that museums are not allowed, but in Russia, when fake scandals broke out, and there was a huge amount of them, we were talking about to prohibit state institutions, state establishment to give their expert evaluation. Let's do commercial expert evaluation. Okay, I think that here we are mixing several things together when we're talking about expert evaluation. It is not what and who. The question is how. If the Russian Museum is found in providing in a premeditated manner false expert opinions, then let's hold the museum and its staff members liable. If you use museum staff, the museum world is quite narrow. It's quite small. I listened to you very attentively. If an expert opinion is signed by Madam Linnik, then Irena Linnik and the State Hermitage are inseparable. And all of this, Irena Linnik always used her own seal, and she never signed as the lead expert of the State Hermitage. We had a very good agreement with her on that, but she was alone to do it. Here we're talking about a collegiate solution. The museum is prepared to be responsible for the correctness of the information it provides. So the question is not who and what. Art consulting, the Russian Museum, the question is how. If three swindler got inside the Gabar center and provide stinking expert opinions, we should just take them by the appropriate part of their body and punish them.
I do agree with you that we need some proper labeling and qualifications. So in a contract with the customers, we need to make a caveat that this and that has the right to display a piece of art on a website with the expert opinion. And this means that it would not be somehow competing with somebody else's opinion. What would you think, Svetlana? Before this roundtable with Sergei, we did some estimates, and we estimated the share of expert errors in the last 10 years using some proper research approach, and we had 1% of expert errors. No expert community, art consulting or something else would reach the same low margin of errors. And we know all of them. We are learning from that. And 1% of errors is okay. We won't get anywhere lower than that. What we had with the Danish paintings, it was a different story. I do remember my mistake. You can wake me up in the middle of the night and I would still remember my mistake. But if a painting was written by an artist of the same period in 1870, and like Vasiliev, he had tuberculosis, the same, and died at 25. It just coincidentally happened that the two artists were very much alike, and now, only now, knowing Alexander Vasiliev, the paintings of whom we still have in the Russian Museum, and even if the Ministry would order us to give away those databases on Alexander Vasiliev, we won't give them away because this is the work of all our life and we cannot really share them. Plus, interpretation of such data is really needed. I see a nice pen that you hold. Are you sure that this is a genuine thing? You come to a shop, it says that this is a pen which you bought in a shop from the sole proprietorship, but mostly all such pieces of luxury are brought into Russia by contraband, and if you claim that the basis for your purchase of a painting is an expert examination signed by one expert, so why would you buy that? And here I actually am in favor of having several people, a community of experts, to do the examination by a reputable agency. In the Russian Museum, people working there, they have a reputation of the institution and they don't want to spoil it. The St. Petersburg University is the largest expert community, and we can buy orders worth millions and billions of rubles and dollars, and really our director trusts us as the staff. We have, for example, Toulouse coming up with an examination of an art painting, the case that went to the Stockholm Court of Arbitration, but there was a competing expert examination produced by the parties. So before such examinations were traced and put into a database, I mean, you might find quite challenging and conflicting examinations and reports. I don't think that anywhere else would you find the capacity, like in our university, capacity to examine. This is the methodology that we can offer. Who do you choose as your experts? And I would trust more the Russian Museum and the expert panel than Marketplace, who would be a priori involved in the would be an interested party. So indeed, I think that museums should be participating in the markets and examinations. About some material interest, financial interest in the examinations done by the Russian Museum. In the Russian Museum, there is a contract. The examination costs 25,000 rubles, of which 60% goes to the budget of the museum, and 40% is shared between a dozen of experts. So, speaking of our financial interest in getting rich on examinations, I don't think that's the case. One of our leading experts once one of our in Moscow told me or answered to my question of what would be the prospects for examinations in the future. She told me, well, I mean, we have all experts reaching the retirement age, so what comes next? And she told me that perhaps we're going back into the Soviet Union times, where collectors were such good experts, were so much educated that they would do the examinations themselves. Unfortunately, the microphone is off. So the question was, what comes in 10 or 15 years? Do you have any students studying expert examination or not? I think, colleagues, perhaps we can finish up, and or we may stay here for some Q&A for those who can stay here. Of course, we have differences in opinions. Whether the arts market should break with the museum market, or I don't think we really want that. But on the other hand, there are some areas where we don't want to cross each other. We heard from Sopis that there the challenges are also quite high, and you might be risking litigation if you say something wrong. So, did many notes here, but I think that we have recording of our session, and perhaps we can come back and watch the recording again to discuss this at a later stage. But personal responsibility is important. Millions of dollars for an expert examination and decades in prison for a fake or premeditatedly wrong, intentionally wrong examination. If the Russian Museum provides a negative examination, then what do we do? When people come to complain that the examination evaluation that I received was wrong, so please provide me with the right one, or the one that I think to be the right one. Fortunately, again, the microphone is not switched on. I can tell you why you didn't find much response there. Well, I don't know what the journalists would be thinking about this. I think we had a very useful discussion. The biggest problem is that we have a lot of money, but very few paintings available to buy. I'm talking worldwide source. Thank you.